The security camera footage was crystal clear. There she was again, Corinne Thompson, the HOA board member who had made my life hell for 3 years, lounging in my backyard pool like she owned the place. Her friends were splashing around, drinking my bottled water from the poolside cooler, using my expensive pool towels. I watched the timestamp, 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I was supposed to be at work for another 3 hours. She knew my schedule perfectly. This was the 4th time this month she had trespassed on my property, and every complaint I filed with the HOA mysteriously disappeared into thin air. But as I sat there watching Corinne flip her hair and laugh with her entitled friends, something inside me snapped. The police would not help. The HOA would not help. The legal system would take years and cost me thousands. That was when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Corinne wanted to use my pool so badly. Fine. I would give her an experience she would never forget. My name is David, and I have lived in Willowbrook Estates for 8 years. When I bought this house, it was my dream home. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and most importantly, a huge backyard perfect for the pool I had always wanted. I saved for 2 years to install that pool. $25,000 of my hard-earned money went into creating my paradise. The pool was not just any pool. It was a saltwater system with LED lighting, a waterfall feature, and professional landscaping around the entire area. I spent my evenings after work floating on my back, staring at the stars, finally feeling like I had made it in life. My friends would come over on weekends, and we would barbecue and swim until late into the night. It was everything I had worked for. Then Corinne Thompson moved in next door. Corinne was in her early 50s, with bleached blonde hair that she kept in a perfect bob, and the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Within a month of moving in, she had somehow gotten herself elected to the HOA board. Within 2 months, she was issuing violations to half the neighborhood for things like mailbox colors and grass height. But Corinne had bigger plans than just being a neighborhood busybody. She had her eye on my pool. It started small. She would make comments when she saw me outside. "That pool must cost a fortune to maintain," she would say with that fake smile. "I bet the HOA would love to know about all those late-night parties you throw." The threats were subtle but clear. I tried to be friendly at first. I even invited her over for a barbecue, thinking maybe we could be good neighbors. That was my first mistake. Corinne spent the entire evening taking pictures of my backyard, asking detailed questions about my pool equipment, and making notes on her phone. She left that night with a smile that made my skin crawl. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find something that made my blood run cold. Wet footprints were leading from my back gate to my pool. The pool deck was soaked. Someone had been swimming in my pool while I was at work. I immediately checked my security cameras. The footage was clear as day. Corinne had used a key to open my back gate. She had brought towels, sunscreen, and even her pool float. She had spent 2 hours in my pool, acting like she owned the place. When she was done, she had used my outdoor shower to rinse off and had taken one of my expensive pool towels with her. I was furious, but I followed the proper channels. I filed a complaint with the HOA, complete with video evidence. I sent copies to all 3 board members, including Corinne herself. I expected swift action and a formal apology. Instead, I got a letter from the HOA 3 days later. My complaint had been reviewed and found to be unsubstantiated. The letter was signed by Corinne Thompson, HOA board secretary. She had investigated her trespassing and cleared herself of all wrongdoing. That was when I realized I was dealing with someone who thought the rules did not apply to her. someone who would use her position of power to get away with whatever she wanted, someone who had seriously underestimated the man whose property she had just violated. But Karen was just getting started. Over the next month, the unauthorized pool visits became a regular occurrence. She would show up with different groups of friends and family members. They would use my pool furniture, eat food they brought, and leave their trash behind. My beautiful backyard sanctuary had become Karen's personal country club. The final straw came on a Saturday morning when I decided to surprise her. I had been tracking her pattern, and I knew she usually came by around noon when I was supposed to be running errands. Instead, I hid in my house and watched through the window. Karen arrived with her sister and two teenage nieces. They set up like they were at a public pool, spreading out towels and setting up Bluetooth speaker. For 3 hours, they treated my property like their own personal resort. When they left, they had forgotten to turn off my pool lights and had left the gate wide open. That night, I sat by my pool with a beer in my hand and made a decision that would change everything. Karen wanted to play games. Fine. But she was about to learn that some games have consequences she never saw coming. Monday morning, I walked into the HOA office with a thick folder of evidence. I had spent the entire weekend organizing security footage, printing timestamps, and documenting every single incident of trespassing. I had photos of Karen's wet footprints, videos of her using my pool equipment, and even pictures of the trash her guests had left behind. The HOA office was located in the community center, a bland building that smelled like industrial carpet and broken dreams. Behind the reception desk sat Margaret, a woman in her 60s who looked like she had given up on life sometime during the Clinton administration. "I need to file a formal complaint against board member Karen Thompson," I said, placing my folder on the counter. Margaret barely looked up from her computer. "What type of violation?" "Trespassing, property damage, and abuse of her board position to cover up her crimes," I replied. That got her attention. She stared at me like I had just spoken in a foreign language. "Board members do not commit violations, sir. They enforce them." I opened my folder and spread out the photos. Here is video evidence of Karen Thompson illegally entering my property and using my pool without permission on 7 separate occasions over the past month. Margaret glanced at the photos for exactly 3 seconds. "I will pass this along to the appropriate committee." She swept my evidence into a manila envelope without looking at it and tossed it into a basket marked "Pending Review." "When can I expect a response?" I asked. "These things take time," she said, already looking back at her computer screen. 2 weeks passed. Nothing. I called the office every day, and every day Margaret told me my complaint was still under review. Finally, I demanded to speak to someone in charge. The next evening, I found myself sitting in the HOA conference room facing 3 board members. Karen sat at the head of the table with that same fake smile, flanked by 2 men who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. "David," Karen said in a voice dripping with false concern, "Margaret tells me you have some concerns about my conduct. I want you to know that as board members, we take all complaints very seriously." I placed my folder on the table. "I have video evidence of you trespassing on my property 7 times in the past month. You have used my pool without permission, brought guests onto my property, and then used your position to cover it up." Karen opened my folder and pretended to study the photos. "These images are very unclear. It could be anyone in this pool. Do you have any witnesses who can confirm this person's identity?" "The security camera footage clearly shows your face," I said. "Security cameras can be doctored," said the man to her left. "Without independent witnesses, this is just your word against a respected board member." I felt my face getting hot. "So you are telling me that video evidence is not enough?" "What we are telling you," Karen said with that infuriating smile, "is that false accusations against board members are a serious matter. They are grounds for violating the community harassment policy." The threat was clear. If I pushed this any further, they would find a way to make me the problem. I left that meeting feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. The system was not just broken, it was actively working against me. The next morning, I called the police. Officer Martinez arrived an hour later, a tired-looking man who dealt with this type of neighborhood dispute every day. "Has any property been damaged?" he asked. "She used my pool without permission," I said. "But was anything damaged or stolen?" "That is not the point. She trespassed on my property." Officer Martinez sighed. "Sir, unless there is proof of actual damage or theft, this is a civil matter. You would need to take her to court." "I have video evidence of her trespassing." "Then you need to speak to a lawyer, not the police." After he left, I immediately called 3 different law firms. The first lawyer wanted a $5,000 retainer just to review my case. The second told me that proving damages in a pool trespassing case would be nearly impossible. The third was the most honest. "You could spend $20,000 and 2 years in court," he said, "and the best outcome would be a restraining order that costs more to enforce than it is worth. My advice: install a better fence." That evening I sat in my backyard and watched Corinne through her kitchen window. She was on the phone, probably planning her next invasion of my property. Every legal avenue had been closed to me. The police would not help. The HOA was corrupt. The courts would bankrupt me. But as I sat there in the darkness, watching Corinne laugh on her phone, I realized something important. She had made one critical mistake. She assumed I would play by the same rules that had failed me. She assumed I would keep running to authorities who did not care. She was about to learn that some people, when pushed far enough, stop asking for permission and start taking action. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with anger and frustration. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Corinne's smug face as she dismissed my complaints. I saw her splashing in my pool while I was at work, treating my property like her personal playground. At 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my computer. If the legal system does not help me, maybe I could find another way to protect my property. I started researching property protection methods, security systems, and legal deterrence. That was when I found it. Buried deep in a forum about home security, someone mentioned electric fence controllers designed for pool areas. They were completely legal when properly installed, and designed to deliver a startling but harmless shock to deter intruders. I spent the next 6 hours reading everything I could find about electric deterrent systems. The technology was fascinating. Low-voltage electrical systems could be installed around pool perimeters to prevent unauthorized access. They were commonly used at hotels and public facilities to keep people from climbing fences or accessing restricted areas. The key was the voltage, high enough to be startling and memorable, but low enough to be completely safe. The same principle is used in electric dog fences, but is designed for human deterrence. And most importantly, they were completely legal as long as they were properly installed and marked. I printed out dozens of articles and technical specifications. I studied electrical codes and safety regulations. By morning, I had a plan forming in my mind. It was ambitious, it was risky, but it was completely within my rights as a property owner. The next evening, I called my friend Mike. He was an electrician who had helped me with various projects around the house over the years. More importantly, he was someone who understood that sometimes good people had to get creative when dealing with bad people. "You want to install what?" Mike asked when I explained my idea. "An electric deterrent system around my pool deck," I said. "Completely legal, properly installed, with all the right permits and warning signs." Mike was quiet for a long moment. This would not be about that HOA lady who has been trespassing, would it? "This is about protecting my property from unauthorized access," I said carefully. Mike laughed. "Right, property protection. How startling are we talking here?" "Memorable but safe. Something that would discourage repeat visits." "I like it," Mike said. "When do we start?" Over the next week, Mike and I designed the perfect system. We would install low-voltage electrical strips around the entire pool deck, hidden beneath decorative trim pieces. The system would be powered by a standard electrical outlet and controlled by a hidden switch inside my house. When activated, anyone stepping onto the pool deck would complete a circuit and receive a sharp but harmless electrical shock. The beauty of the system was its selectivity. I could control exactly when it was active. During my normal pool use, it would be turned off. But when I was not home, or when I suspected Corinne might visit, I could activate it remotely using a phone app that Mike rigged up. We spent hours planning the installation. Every wire had to be hidden. Every connection had to be waterproof. Every safety feature had to be tested and double-tested. This was not some amateur prank. This was a professional-grade security system designed to protect my property within the bounds of the law. The hardest part was keeping my excitement under control. Every time I saw Corinne in her backyard, I wanted to tell her what was coming. Every time she made one of her snide comments about my pool, I had to bite my tongue to keep from smiling. But patience was part of the plan. Corinne had gotten comfortable with her routine. She knew my work schedule, she knew when the neighbors were home, and she knew exactly when she could trespass without consequences. That predictability would be her downfall. I also upgraded my security camera system. If I were going to do this, I wanted to capture every moment in high definition. I installed cameras with night vision, motion detection, and cloud backup. Whatever happened, I would have professional quality footage of every second. The installation took 3 days. Mike worked during his lunch breaks and after hours, carefully running wires and testing connections. To anyone watching, it looked like routine pool maintenance. The electrical strips were completely invisible, hidden beneath decorative molding that looked like a design upgrade. On the final day, we tested the system. Mike touched the deck with a metal tool while I activated the circuit. The result was perfect. A sharp crack of electricity, bright enough to see and loud enough to hear, but completely safe. "That will get someone's attention," Mike said with a grin. That night I sat by my pool with the control app on my phone, watching the security cameras. Corinne's house was dark, but I knew she would be back soon. Her pattern was too established, her sense of entitlement too strong. She had no idea that her next unauthorized pool visit would be her last. Installation day arrived on a Wednesday morning. Mike showed up at 7 a.m. sharp with his van full of equipment and a grin that told me he was enjoying this project as much as I was. We had spent 2 weeks planning every detail, and now it was time to make it a reality. "You sure about this?" Mike asked as he unloaded his tools. "Once we flip that switch, there is no going back." "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied. The installation was a work of art. Mike ran the electrical strips beneath the decorative trim around the entire pool deck, making them completely invisible to the naked eye. The system was powered by a dedicated circuit breaker in my electrical panel, with a hidden control switch inside my house and a backup remote activation system on my phone. Every connection was waterproofed and tested. Every safety protocol was followed to the letter. Mike even installed warning signs in strategic locations, small placards that read "Private Property Electronic Security System in Use," in compliance with local regulations. The beauty of this system, Mike explained as he tested the final connections, is that it is completely selective. You control when it is active down to the second. Normal pool use, system off. Unexpected visitors, system on. We spent the afternoon calibrating the voltage. Too low and it would not be effective. Too high and it could cause injury. We tested it on metal objects, watched the electrical arc and listened to the sharp crack of the discharge. The result was perfect. Startling, memorable, but completely safe. That evening, Mike and I stood on my back deck admiring our work. To anyone looking, my pool area looked the same as before. The electrical system was completely hidden, the warning signs were small and discreet, and everything looked like normal pool equipment. "Time for the real test," Mike said, pulling out a long metal rod. "You ready for this?" I activated the system using my phone app. Mike touched the rod to the pool deck. Crack! A bright blue spark jumped from the metal to the electrical strip, followed by a sharp electrical pop that echoed across the backyard. "Perfect," I said. "That will get someone's attention." After Mike left, I spent the evening setting up my enhanced security system. I had installed 4 new cameras with motion detection and night vision capabilities. Every angle of my backyard was covered in high definition. When Karen made her next visit, I would capture every moment in crystal clear detail. I also set up the remote monitoring system. The cameras would send alerts to my phone whenever they detected motion in the backyard. I could watch live footage from anywhere and activate the electrical system with a single tap on my phone screen. Thursday and Friday passed without incident. Karen seemed to be sticking to her usual schedule, which meant her next visit would likely be over the weekend, when I was supposed to be running errands. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, warm, and not a cloud in the sky. Perfect pool weather. I made a big show of loading my car with shopping bags and announcing to my neighbor that I would be gone for several hours running errands across town. But instead of leaving, I parked my car at a friend's house 2 blocks away and walked back through the woods behind my neighborhood. I had a perfect view of my backyard from the trees behind my fence, and my phone was ready to activate the system the moment Corinne appeared. At exactly noon, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the camera app and felt my heart start racing. There she was. Corinne was walking across her backyard toward my gate, carrying a large beach bag and wearing a bright red swimsuit like she owned the place. She was not alone. Behind her walked 2 women I had never seen before, probably friends she had invited to enjoy her pool. They were laughing and talking loudly, completely confident that they would not be disturbed. Corinne reached my gate and pulled out a key. My blood boiled as I realized she had somehow made herself a copy of my gate key. This was not just trespassing anymore. This was breaking with premeditation. The 3 women walked into my backyard like they were arriving at a resort. They spread out towels on my pool furniture, set up a Bluetooth speaker, and even brought their cooler full of drinks. Corinne pointed to different areas of my yard, giving her friends a tour like she was the hostess. "The owner is never home on Saturday afternoons," I heard Karen say through my security system's audio feed. We have the place to ourselves for hours. That was it. I had heard enough. I opened the control app on my phone and placed my finger over the activation button. Karen and her friends were standing around the pool, deciding who would go in first. Karen stepped toward the pool deck, her bare foot inches from the hidden electrical strip. This was the moment I had been waiting for. 3 weeks of planning, thousands of dollars in equipment, and countless hours of preparation had led to this single moment. I tapped the screen. The system activated with a soft electronic hum that only I could hear through my security cameras. Karen took another step forward, then another. Her foot made contact with the pool deck directly over the main electrical strip. Crack! The electrical discharge was even more dramatic than our tests had predicted. A bright blue spark arced from the deck to Karen's foot, followed by a sharp electrical pop that echoed across the entire neighborhood. Karen screamed and jumped backward, falling onto the grass with her friends. But that was just the beginning. The scream that came from Karen's mouth was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was pure shock mixed with indignation, the sound of someone who had never faced real consequences for her actions. She scrambled backward on the grass, staring at the pool deck like it had personally betrayed her. "What the hell was that?" screamed one of her friends, a woman with short gray hair who looked just as entitled as Karen. "He electrified his pool deck," Karen shrieked, getting to her feet and brushing grass off her swimsuit. "That psychopath electrified his property." Through my security cameras, I watched Karen pace back and forth on my lawn, her face red with rage. She was pointing at the pool deck and yelling at her friends, who were gathering up their towels and drinks with the speed of people who suddenly realized they were somewhere they should not be. "This is assault," Karen screamed at one of my cameras, apparently realizing she was being recorded. "I am calling the police right now. This is attempted murder." I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing out loud. Karen had gone from confident trespasser to hysterical victim in 30 seconds. She pulled out her phone and started dialing, packing in circles on my lawn while her friends stood by looking embarrassed. "Yes, I need to report an assault," Karen said into her phone. "A neighbor has electrified his property and tried to kill me. No, I was not hurt, but that is not the point. Yes, I was on his property, but that does not matter." I could tell from Karen's increasingly frustrated tone that the police were not taking her complaint as seriously as she expected. The conversation went on for 10 minutes, with Karen getting louder and more demanding with each exchange. Finally, she hung up and turned to her friends. "They are sending someone out, but they said it could be an hour or more. This is not considered an emergency since no one was injured." Her friends were already packing up their things. "Karen, maybe we should just leave," said the gray-haired woman. "This feels like something we should not be involved in." "No," Karen snapped. "I am not going anywhere until the police arrest this maniac for attempted murder." But her friends were already walking toward the gate. Within 5 minutes, Karen was standing alone in my backyard, still in her red swimsuit, still screaming at my security cameras about lawsuits and police reports. That was when my phone rang. It was my neighbor Tom from across the street. "David, what the hell is going on over there?" Tom asked. "Karen Thompson is in your backyard screaming about being electrocuted." I had to think fast. She was trespassing on my property again. I installed a legal security system to protect my pool area. She must have ignored the warning signs. "Warning signs?" Tom asked. "Check the city records. I pulled permits for an electronic security system 3 weeks ago, Everything is completely legal and up to code." There was a pause, so she got shocked for trespassing. "The system worked exactly as designed," I said. Tom started laughing. "Oh man, this is perfect. Do you know how many complaints we have gotten about her using your pool? Half the neighborhood has seen her over there when you are not home." This was news to me. Other people knew she was trespassing. Everyone knew, but nobody wanted to get involved. You know how she is with the HOA, but if you caught her in the act— Tom's voice trailed off with obvious satisfaction. 20 minutes later, a police car pulled up in front of my house. I walked over from my hiding spot in the woods and arrived just as Officer Martinez was getting out of his vehicle. The same officer who had told me this was a civil matter 2 weeks earlier. "Afternoon, David," he said with a slight smile. "Got a call about some kind of electrical incident." Karen immediately ran over to us, still in her swimsuit, still furious. "Officer, this man tried to kill me. He electrified his property to assault innocent visitors." Officer Martinez looked at Karen, then at me, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, were you on Mr. David's property when this incident occurred?" "That is not the point," Karen screamed. "He cannot just electrify his property." "Ma'am, he can," Officer Martinez said calmly, "as long as the system is properly installed and marked. David, do you have permits for this security system?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the electronic permits. "Installed 3 weeks ago by a licensed electrician. All work was inspected and approved by the city." Officer Martinez nodded and walked over to examine my pool area. He found the small warning signs that Mike had installed and took photos of them with his phone. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "these signs indicate that electronic security is in use. Did you see these signs before entering the property?" Karen's face went white. Those signs are tiny. Nobody could see those." "They meet the legal requirements for size and placement," Officer Martinez replied. "And they are in English, which I assume you can read." "But I have permission to be here," Karen lied desperately. Officer Martinez looked at me. "David, did you give this woman permission to use your pool?" "Not," I said. "She has been trespassing for weeks. I have security footage of 7 separate incidents of unauthorized entry." Officer Martinez turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, I am going to need to see some identification. Trespassing is still a crime, even if you do not get shocked doing it." The look on Karen's face was priceless. Her master plan had completely backfired. The police report took 2 hours to complete. Officer Martinez interviewed me, examined my security footage, reviewed my permits, and documented everything with the thoroughness of someone who enjoyed watching a neighborhood bully finally face consequences. Karen spent those 2 hours alternating between threats, demands, and increasingly desperate attempts to rewrite the story. She claimed she had implied permission to use the pool. She said the electrical system was a booby trap designed to cause injury. She even tried to argue that HOA board members had special property access rights. None of it worked. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez finally said as he handed Karen a citation, "you are being charged with criminal trespassing. The electrical system is completely legal and properly marked. You chose to ignore the warning signs and enter private property without permission." Karen stared at the citation like it was written in a foreign language. "This is ridiculous. I am on the HOA board. I have oversight responsibilities." "HOA board membership does not grant trespassing rights," Officer Martinez replied. "You will need to appear in court on the date listed on your citation." After the police left, I thought the drama was over. I was wrong. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Karen standing on my porch, now dressed in a business suit and carrying a thick folder. Behind her stood a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as her lawyer. "David," Karen said in a tone that tried to sound reasonable, "I think we can resolve this misunderstanding without involving the courts." I leaned against my doorframe and crossed my arms. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Her lawyer stepped forward. "My client is willing to drop her assault charges against you in exchange for your agreement to remove the electrical system and allow reasonable HOA access to your property." I stared at them for a moment, then started laughing. Assault charges. Officer Martinez just gave her a trespassing citation an hour ago. "We filed additional charges with the district attorney," the lawyer said smoothly. "Assault with a dangerous weapon, reckless endangerment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Karen smiled her fake smile. "We can make all of this go away, David. All you have to do is be reasonable." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "So you are saying that if I do not remove my legal security system and allow you to continue trespassing on my property, you will file false charges against me?" The lawyer's face went pale. "Turn off that camera immediately." "This is my property," I replied, still recording. "I can record whatever I want on my porch." Karen's fake composure finally cracked. "You think you are so smart, don't you? You think your little shock system makes you untouchable. I am going to destroy you. I am going to make your life so miserable that you will beg to sell this house and move away." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, making sure my phone was capturing every word. "I am promising you," Karen snarled. "I have been on this HOA board for 3 years. I know every rule, every regulation, every loophole. I will find violations you did not even know existed. I will fine you for bankruptcy. I will make every day you live in this neighborhood a living hell." Her lawyer grabbed her arm. "Karen, we should go." But Karen was not done. "You want to play games? Fine. Let me tell you what is going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I am calling for an emergency HOA meeting to discuss your dangerous security system. I am going to have it declared a community hazard. Then I am going to start inspecting every inch of your property for code violations." She stepped closer to my door, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I am going to measure your grass height every morning. I am going to document every car that parks in your driveway. I am going to find out if your pool permits are up to date, if your fence height is regulation, and if your outdoor lighting meets community standards." "Karen," her lawyer said urgently, "we need to leave." Karen ignored him completely. "And when I find violations, and I will find them, the fines are going to start at $500 each. Every day you do not fix them, the fines double. By the time I am done with you, you will owe this HOA more money than your house is worth." She was screaming now, completely unhinged. "You think shocking me was bad? Wait until you see what I can do with legitimate authority. I am going to make you regret the day you ever thought you could outsmart Karen Thompson." I stopped recording and smiled. "Are you finished?" Karen straightened her suit jacket, apparently thinking she had just delivered some kind of devastating threat. "We will see how smart you feel when the HOA owns your house." "Actually," I said, "I think you will find that your days of threatening people are over." "What do you mean?" she asked. I held up my phone. "I mean, I just recorded a board member threatening to abuse her authority for personal revenge, admitting to planning harassment campaigns, and describing her intention to manufacture false violations. I am pretty sure the other board members would be very interested to see this video." Corinne's face went white as she realized what she had just done. "You cannot use that recording," her lawyer said. "I can," I replied. "This is a one-party consent state, and she was on my property threatening me. This recording is completely admissible in court." Corinne opened her mouth to say something else, but her lawyer physically pulled her away from my door. "We are done here," he said firmly. As they walked away, I heard Corinne screaming at her lawyer about lawsuits and rights and getting revenge. But her voice was getting smaller and more desperate with each step. I went inside and immediately uploaded the recording to cloud storage. Then I made copies and started writing emails to the other HOA board members. Corinne had just made the biggest mistake of her life, and I was going to make sure everyone knew about it. The emergency HOA board meeting that Corinne had threatened never happened. Instead, I received a call at 7 a.m. the next morning from James Patterson, the HOA board president. "David, I just watched the video you sent," James said without preamble. "We need to talk. Can you come to the community center this morning?" An hour later, I found myself sitting across from James and the third board member, Patricia Williams. Corinne was notably absent. "In 20 years of HOA management, I have never seen anything like this," James said, shaking his head. "Corinne has put this entire organization at legal risk with her behavior." Patricia leaned forward. "We had no idea she was trespassing on your property. If we had known, we would have stopped it immediately." "What about all the complaints I filed?" I asked. James pulled out a thick folder. "We never saw them. Corinne was handling all property disputes as board secretary. She filed your complaints in her files instead of bringing them to the board." They showed me dozens of complaints that Corinne had intercepted and hidden. Violations she had issued without board approval. Fines she had collected and kept for herself. The corruption went far deeper than just my pool situation. "We are calling for her immediate removal from the board," Patricia said. "And we want to make it clear that your security system is completely within your rights as a property owner." "What about her threats of harassment and false violations?" I asked. "Any future complaints from Corinne will be automatically dismissed," James replied. "And we are implementing new oversight procedures to prevent this kind of abuse in the future." 2 weeks later, Corinne received an official letter from the HOA board. She was being removed from her position immediately. All fines she had issued without proper authorization were being reversed, and a formal complaint was being filed with the state about her misuse of authority. But the real satisfaction came from watching Corinne try to rebuild her reputation in the neighborhood. The video of her threatening me had somehow found its way to several neighbors, and word of her trespassing and corruption spread quickly. The same people who had been afraid to speak up before were now sharing their own stories about Corinne's abuse of power. Fines issued for personal grudges. Property inspections are conducted as harassment. Board meetings were manipulated to serve her agenda. Within a month, Corinne had become a social outcast in her neighborhood. Her morning walks were met with closed doors and turned backs. The woman who had once ruled through fear and intimidation now found herself completely powerless. The legal consequences were even more satisfying. Corinne's trespassing citation resulted in a $500 fine and 6 months of probation. Her lawyer's attempts to file assault charges against me were dismissed after the prosecutor reviewed my permits and security footage. But the real victory came when Corinne's lawyer filed a motion to withdraw from her case. In court documents that became public record, he cited irreconcilable differences regarding legal strategy and client behavior. In plain English, Even her lawyer was tired of dealing with her lies and threats. 3 months after the electrical incident, I was hosting my first pool party in over a year. 20 neighbors showed up, including several who had never spoken to me before. They brought food, drinks, and stories about their own experiences with Corinne's reign of terror. "You did what we all wanted to do but were too afraid to try," said Tom from across the street, raising his beer in a toast. "You stood up to the neighborhood bully and won." The party lasted until midnight. We swam, we barbecued, we laughed about Corinne's shocked expression when she hit the electrical system. For the first time since she had moved in, my backyard felt like mine again. The final chapter in Corinne's story came 6 months later. I was working in my garden when I saw a moving truck pull up to her house. Corinne was leaving Willowbrook Estates, defeated and disgraced. As the movers loaded her furniture, I caught her looking over at my pool one last time. Even from a distance, I could see the mixture of anger and humiliation on her face. She had tried to take something that did not belong to her, and she had learned that actions have consequences. I never spoke to Corinne again after that night on my porch. I did not need to. The electrical system had said everything that needed to be said. Sometimes the best revenge is not elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it is just letting someone face the natural consequences of their own bad choices. Today, my pool area is exactly as it should be. The electrical system is still there, hidden and ready, but I have never needed to use it again. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods, and everyone knows what happens to uninvited guests who ignore warning signs. I still get compliments on my pool from neighbors and friends. But now, when people ask about the security system, I just smile and say it works exactly as designed. Most problems solve themselves once people understand there are real consequences for their actions. Corinne Thompson thought she could take whatever she wanted and use her position to avoid responsibility. She learned that some people, when pushed far enough, push back harder than expected. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys do win. The best part is that every time I float in my pool on a warm summer evening, I remember that this is what victory feels like. Not just the satisfaction of revenge, but the peace that comes from standing up for yourself when no one else will. My pool is finally mine again. And Corinne Thompson learned that some people fight back when you try to take what belongs to them.